Hey people, how's it going? Welcome to another video, welcome to another episode of my favourite album from that year. Today we are tackling the almighty 1975, slowly making our way through the 70s. Lately my channel has taken, because of like this little segment that we're doing, my channel has sort of taken a tangent into like classic rock as opposed to like hard rock and heavy metal. But honestly, after 1975, we'll then move on to 1976, and I promise you that is where the metal will kick back in. I've also got one more ranking that I'm in the middle of doing, in the middle of listening to, and that is ultimate like classic rock, if not predates classic rock. So once that's done, I promise you we'll get back into the heavy metal stuff. It's just been a fun little tangent. So yeah, as you can see by the title, we got a friggin' long one today. We're doing my favorite album from 1975, and that just happens to be none other than Rick Wakeman's third album, I believe, The Myths and Legends of King Arthur and Knights of the Round Table. You could argue, like, what else came out in 1975? Well, for starters, one I can immediately think of was Black Sabbath's Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. I've already done 2 Sabbath albums for my favorite year, plus I'm not a fan of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, so it wasn't going to be there. Let me know down below what your favorite of 1975 is before we get started, like we always do. And also, disclaimer, obviously, I have not heard every album from 1975, so please just drop down below what your favorite picks are. But for me, today, we're going to be tackling Ricky Wakeman's third solo album, The Myths and the Legends of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. How is that for an album title? I swear to God. Right. So what's there to say about, we're just going to call it King Arthur, okay? The Myths and Legends. We're just going to refer to this epically long title as King Arthur. So like I said before, this is Rick Wakeman's third solo studio album. Rick Wakeman obviously being the keyboard player, and I think, was he a founding member? I'm not sure. I've never listened to Yes, but he was a original member of the band Yes with, who else was in Yes? I don't know. I should dwell into that. But yeah, he went on to do solo stuff. He came out with an album that I'm pretty sure wasn't actually deemed a Rick Wakeman solo album, and then I can't remember what it was called. Oh, I should have looked it up. But he then came out with The Six Wives of Henry VIII, which is good, you know, from 1973, I think. Yep. And then Journey to the Center of the Earth, which came out in 1974, and that one was good. I could have put that as my favorite album from 74, but no, I went with Slade and Flame. Anyway, this one came out on, when did this come out? March 27, 1975, so we're not quite 50 years yet. For those who may be a bit confused, this album did get re-recorded back in 2016. So obviously back in the day when, you know, all you could fit, all the music you wanted, hang on, how do I say this? Whatever you wanted to do, it had to fit on an LP, right? And Rick Wakeman's massive story music thing that he wanted to do with King Arthur, he might have done it with Journey to the Center of the Earth as well, was heavily, you know, cut short because he could only fit 40 minutes on an LP. So one thing, I'm baffled that he didn't do a double LP for this, but whatever. It got re-recorded in 2016. It's like 3 times as long. This is like 40 minutes. That one goes for like an hour and a half, so that's actually only double the length. But anyway, I heard this album. Where did I first this album? I won't lie. I really recently found this album. However, it had always been mentioned in amongst my family. So I started back 10 years ago. I started getting into the likes of symphonic heavy metal, right? I was listening to Maiden, and then I found bands such as, you know, Nightwish and Rhapsody and all that power metal symphonic stuff. And I loved it. I thought it was amazing. And then, so Ma said, oh, you should probably check this album out, Ricky Wakeman, King Arthur. And I'm like, oh, what's that? My dad was not a fan. He was like, no, don't listen to that, you'll hate it. And I just never did until literally this year. And I absolutely thrashed it. It was, well, it kind of reminds me of when my little boy was born, because at that time I was thrashing it, you know, over and over and over again, just really enjoying it. So whenever I hear it now, I think of him getting born. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, like as you could probably tell, it's a concept album telling the story of King Arthur. I know that Rick Wakeman did a lot of research on King Arthur before he put out this album. So there's like references across, several different books that tell the story of King Arthur and such. But like it's 5 minutes long. It's so cool. There's no track listing on the back. Let's open it up and see if there's track listing in here. Oh, look at that. There isn't. But before we get into that, actually, look at this album art, though. Oh my god. This is there's the LP itself. The lyrical book is right here. Here we go. King Arthur. Like it's a proper lyrical book. Do you know what I mean? Like it's almost like a storybook. I should probably read this to the little boy and just let him get amongst English history. So you got track 1, King Arthur. You've got actually we'll just use the internet. So you've got the first song being Arthur, which obviously sets the tone for. Obviously, if you're listening to Rick Wakeman, you probably have an idea of what kind of album or music you're going to be listening to. It's very keyboard heavy, rather than him being a lead guitar player or anything. A person, such as a person like, say, Steve Vai or Joe Satriani, where their stuff is heavily guitar influenced, and rather than having like a full-fledged band, it's him with his guitar. That's pretty much the same, but Ricky Wakeman is obviously a keyboard player, so a lot of the lead stuff is synthy, electronic-y vibes, as well as, heavily orchestrated stuff. This has a full orchestra behind it, as well as Rick Wakeman doing all his fancy keyboard stuff, and it's so cool. It's such an early blend of symphonic rock metal, do you know what I mean? And I think that's why I've got such a sweet spot for it now. So, like I said, Arthur is the first song, and it goes for 7.5 minutes, and it has Arthur's theme that he uses throughout the whole album. He's got vocals in it, lyrics and vocals in it. Not every song has lyrics and vocals in it, that's why I say that. But Arthur is a very recognizable theme. It's very, very cool. It's a fun song. I think it's great. It's got a real powerful... Who sings the vocals in this? I'm not 100% sure. Gary Hopkins. So he's the guy that sings on this record, and he does a fantastic job with singing about King Arthur being the king of all this land. Very cool. Lady of the Lake comes next, which is a 45-second choir thing. Really medieval, really early night... not 19th century, real like early 9th century sounding stuff. It's so cool. It's 45 seconds. It's just sweet and short. It's an interlude track, obviously, but it's all vocals. There's no music in it. Track 3 it starts off, it sounds like the ballad of the album. It's called Guinevere, which is King Arthur's wife. This one goes for 7 minutes almost. However, like I say, it starts with the ballad, and the singing in it is quite beautiful and soft, and then it gets funky and real Rick Wakeman-y, you know what I mean? It just gets real dun 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 dun, you know what I mean? It just gets real noisy. It's a really, really cool song. Don't let the intro of the ballad fool you that it's going to be a slow song for 7 minutes, because it doesn't stay that long. Sir Lancelot and the Black Knight. That's fun. That starts with like sounding like horses. You could say dun 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 fight, dun 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 fight. It's a really cool song, and it's a great name as well, Sir Lancelot and the Black Knight. It's just really, really fun. That's just obviously pretty much the same as everything so far. It's got the funky noises in it. It's great. That's the end of side 1, so that's the first 4 songs, and then you flip over to side B, and you get Merlin the Magician. Now, if you're like me, the only remnants of Merlin that I'm familiar with is from the Disney film Sword in the Stone. He's an absolute whack job. He's pretty much Dumbledore. But yeah, that song is 90% instrumental, even though it's nearly 9 minutes long. There's a choir at the start, I think, or at the end of Black Knight. I can't remember. But there's choirs at the end of Merlin. I know that, but a lot of it is just spacey, funky music. Really, really, it's fun. It's great. It's early fantasy music, and it's honestly so fun. I love it so much. Sir Galahad is next. Not to be confused with Gil-galad from Lord of the Rings. He was an elven king. Galahad is a fun little song, and it's nearing the end of Arthur's reign by now, like the story if you read the lyrics. But like there's a really interesting there's a really freaky part in that section. Well, I say freaky, it just sounds like somewhat like Jaws, you know what I mean? It's like dum 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 dum, and underneath it, it says pull me, which I'm assuming is in reference to the sword, obviously, Excalibur. But honestly, that's a really, really cool song too. That's a quick one. Well, quick, it's the quickest song on this side. That's a 6-minute song. It's really, really fun. I love that. But then you get hit with the last battle at the end of the album, which is a 10-minute song. It's 9 minutes 40. And that one kind of, it's funny. So it's a 10-minute song and it's at the end of the album, but it's almost not as epic as it could be right up until the very end, because it's a storytelling thing, and there's a narration at the second half of near the end of it where they go on to say, like, you know, Arthur was killed by a foe or whatever, but the townspeople didn't know about it, and they really hoped he would return one day, but he didn't. And then there's lyrics where it goes on to say, about the year 1200, King Arthur's bones were found buried next to his wife. Really, really summed up. But and then that's cool. There's the Arthur theme from the first song, Arthur, throughout the last battle song. It's really, really fun. It really brings the whole thing together, as an orchestra would keep playing the same themes. I'm pretty sure there's a Guinevere theme in that song as well from the third song. But yeah, and then it ends with this epic, bombastic, orchestral ending, and it's, you know, it's just awesome. It ends so fun. It's just like, but yeah, it could have been epicer, that last song, but it's still on an epic level. Do you know what I mean? Could have been better, but it's still great. Honestly, listen, Myths and the Legends of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table is a really fantastic album, and it's a piece of English history as well. Like, not just the album itself, but obviously King Arthur is a piece of English history, but the album too is a piece of English musical history. It's so fun. I highly recommend. If you're into symphonic metal, if you're into the likes of Yes, Genesis, or even like the heavy metal stuff, if you like Rush, if you like Dream Theater, please go and check out, you know, the early predate stuff. 1975, it's really, really good. I highly, highly recommend King Arthur. Awesome as team. Thank you so much for hanging out with me while I sit here and discuss my favorite album from 1975. As we said at the start, let me know down below what your favorite album is from 1975. Is it Sabbath Bloody Sabbath? Is it what's that Queen one? Is it A Night at the Opera? Did that come out in 75? You know, let me know. Get the conversation flowing. Let me know why you actually don't like this album. But hey, like I said at the start, I've got one more ranking I'm in the middle of doing, which will be predating all the heavy metal stuff. But then once that's done, we'll get back on the heavy metal train and everything will be great. So yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Let me know your favorite album, and I will see you in 1976. See you later.